Imagine proving that math, the most rigid, disciplined, clean thing humanity ever built, is fundamentally incomplete. Not wrong, not broken, just incapable of finishing itself. Now imagine doing that before you're 25, and then imagine slowly unraveling for the rest of your life because you're terrified someone's trying to poison you. That is Kurt Gödel, the man who walked into mathematics like a quiet intern and casually detonated a bomb onto the entire field. There's something almost unfair about him. He didn't scream, he didn't posture, he didn't try to be revolutionary. He just wrote a paper, calmly, precisely. And that paper told the most confident minds of the 20th century that their grand plan to make mathematics perfectly secure? Impossible. It's not even dramatic in the usual way. No explosions, no scandals, just logic, pure logic. And somehow it feels darker than a scandal. Because if math can't fully prove itself, what exactly are we standing on? Let's talk about the most unsettling genius you probably never think about. Kurt Gödel was born in 1906 in Brunn, then part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, now Brno in the Czech Republic. He was a sickly, anxious kid, extremely curious, the kind of kid who asked why constantly and didn't accept vague answers. His family nicknamed him Mr. Y. That nickname feels prophetic. He grew up during the collapse of empires. World War I fractured Europe while Gödel was still young. Borders shifted, institutions fell, certainty evaporated. And maybe that environment matters, because Gödel became obsessed with certainty. He enrolled at the University of Vienna, initially intending to study physics, but he drifted into mathematics and logic, and then into something even more specific, the foundations of mathematics. Not solving equations, not building bridges, but asking a more dangerous question. Can mathematics prove that it is consistent and complete? He joined the Vienna Circle, a group of philosophers and scientists trying to build a logically purified worldview. They believed everything meaningful could, in principle, be formalized and verified. It was ambitious. It was clean. It was very 20th century. Gödel was the quiet one in the room. And then he ruined the party. So, here's the vibe in early 1900s math. Mathematicians were tired of paradoxes. There had been logical glitches like Russell's paradox that made people uneasy. If math was going to be the foundation of science, it couldn't have cracks. Enter David Hilbert, giant of the field, confident, visionary. He proposed a program, now called Hilbert's program, to formalize all of mathematics into a complete, consistent system. Basically, write down clear rules, show they never contradict each other, and prove that every true statement in math can be derived from those rules. It's like trying to build the ultimate operating system for reality. No bugs, no loopholes, no uncertainty. Gödel was 24 when he showed that dream doesn't work. Not because we haven't tried hard enough, because it can't work. That's a very specific kind of devastation. To understand what Gödel disrupted, we need the mood of the time. Mathematics in the early 20th century was chasing absolute foundations. After centuries of growth, it had become massive and abstract. Set theory, infinite hierarchies, symbolic logic. There was fear beneath the ambition. If contradictions were hiding somewhere deep inside, the whole structure could collapse. Hilbert's program aimed to prevent that collapse. The goal was twofold. One, Prove that mathematics is consistent, meaning it will never produce a contradiction. 2. Prove that it is complete, meaning every true statement can, in principle, be proven within the system. It was an attempt to domesticate infinity, to cage uncertainty with symbols. The assumption was simple. If mathematics is a formal system with rules, then with enough cleverness, we can prove everything true within it. Gödel asked a different question. What if the system can talk about itself? And that's where things tilt. In 1931, Gödel published his Incompleteness theorems. They are technical, deeply technical, but the core idea is almost disturbingly elegant. Gödel figured out how to encode mathematical statements as numbers. This technique, now called Gödel numbering, allowed statements to refer indirectly to themselves. And then he constructed a statement that essentially says, this statement is not provable within the system. If the system proves the statement, it becomes false, because it says it's unprovable. If the system cannot prove it, then it's true, but unprovable. Either way, something breaks. So, Gödel proved any sufficiently powerful formal system capable of arithmetic cannot be both complete and consistent. If it's consistent, there will always be true statements that cannot be proven within it. And, even more unsettling, a system cannot prove its own consistency from within itself. It's like discovering your brain cannot fully verify that it isn't hallucinating. Not because you're bad at thinking, because thinking has structural limits. Hilbert's grand project collapsed, not dramatically, quietly, irreversibly. I need you to sit with how wild that is. He didn't just poke holes in a theory. He showed that the ambition of total certainty, in mathematics of all places, is structurally impossible. And he did it using the very tools the formalists trusted. That's what makes it almost poetic. He didn't attack math from outside. He used math to show math's limits. It's like watching someone prove that mirrors can't reflect themselves fully, using only reflections. Also, imagine being Hilbert. You're building this enormous intellectual cathedral, and a 24-year-old hands you a proof saying, there will always be rooms you can't enter. No drama, just ink on paper. Gödel didn't celebrate. He didn't gloat. He just moved on. That's terrifying in its own way. Gödel's life didn't stabilize after his theorem. In the 1930s, Europe destabilized again, this time with Nazis. Gödel, who had complex and sometimes naive political views, eventually fled to the United States in 1940. He ended up at the Institute for Advanced Study in Princeton. That's where he became close friends with Albert Einstein. Einstein reportedly said he came to the Institute mainly for the privilege of walking home with Gödel. That detail feels surreal. Two of the most profound minds of the century strolling through Princeton, discussing time and logic. Gödel didn't stop thinking about foundations. He worked on set theory and even found solutions to Einstein's field equations, suggesting the theoretical possibility of time loops. But his mental health deteriorated. He became increasingly paranoid, convinced people were trying to poison him. He would only eat food prepared by his wife, Adele. When she was hospitalized, he refused to eat. He died in 1978 of starvation and malnutrition. The man who proved limits of systems couldn't escape the fragility of his own. Gödel's incompleteness theorems aren't just mathematical results. They feel existential. They whisper that no matter how refined your framework, logical, philosophical, technological, there will always be truths it cannot capture. It undercuts the fantasy of total closure. Psychologically, that's unsettling. We crave systems that explain everything: ideologies, theories, algorithms. Gödel's work suggests there will always be remainder, something true that cannot be fully formalized. And he didn't say this with bitterness. He was, in some ways, a Platonist. He believed mathematical truths existed independently of us. We just can't bottle them all. There's humility in that, but also vertigo. We live in a century obsessed with formal systems again. Code, algorithms, AI models, automated reasoning, attempts to quantify behavior, predict everything, optimize everything. There's a quiet Hilbert energy in tech culture. Build a complete system, eliminate uncertainty, close the loop. Gödel doesn't directly refute technology, but he plants a warning sign. Any sufficiently complex, rule-based system will have limits it cannot resolve internally. You cannot fully debug existence from inside existence. There will always be statements that are true, but unprovable within your current structure. That pattern repeats in politics, in philosophy, in personal identity. The desire for total coherence keeps crashing into structural incompleteness. And we keep acting surprised. What gets me isn't just the theorem, it's the personality. Gödel was brilliant, yeah, but also fragile, anxious, withdrawn, capable of piercing clarity in logic, yet deeply vulnerable in life. There's something almost cruel about that contrast. You can map the limits of formal systems with surgical precision and still be overwhelmed by fear in your own kitchen. People love to romanticize genius, but Gödel's life doesn't feel glamorous. It feels narrow, intense, isolated. He chased certainty in symbols and maybe never found it in himself. That's not immoral, it's just a detail that won't leave me alone. Gödel quietly destabilizes a comforting assumption that if we just think carefully enough, systematize thoroughly enough, we can eliminate ambiguity. His work suggests ambiguity is structural, not laziness, not failure, structural. That shifts how you see knowledge itself. Every worldview, every framework, every intellectual architecture carries blind spots it cannot detect from inside. You don't collapse into chaos because of that, but you lose the fantasy of total mastery. And once you lose that fantasy, certainty feels different. Gödel didn't destroy mathematics, he made it honest. And once you know that even math has edges it can't cross, certainty stops feeling solid and starts feeling borrowed.